Well, it's pretty incredible experience. I honestly can say this is the most amazing experience I've ever had in my entire life. I did a lot of research before deciding to run, and because I was concerned about what was happening, and before that, I was looking for a way to contribute to my community in a bigger way. My father passed away a few years ago, and it really shook up our life. He unexpectedly, like most people, got cancer, and it took him very quickly. He was young. He was 56. And it really got me doing a lot of soul searching and wanting to step up and step out in a different way than I had. I certainly worked, I'm a city planner. I worked at the city as a planner. I worked the provincial government as a director in housing and services for people with disabilities. And I also have a business, so I'm a very busy, active person, as well as my volunteering activities with the United Way and so on. But I needed to do something bigger. You know, you don't know how long you're here, and I wanted to make the biggest contribution I could. And so our company works actually in municipal government, and municipal governments all over Saskatchewan and elsewhere. So that's an area that's a real strength of mine and expertise. And so when I saw that we were looking likely with two people who'd been on council for 10 or more years, I thought, I think Saskatoon needs some more diversity on that in that campaign, needs some real choice, and also needs to raise the level of debate. And so I did a lot of homework, and it looked like what our research showed is people were looking for change. They were looking for somebody, and some with a different perspective, somebody fresh, who wasn't attached to I guess the decisions that had been made. And so when I decided to run, I have to say, it was one day I'm going to do this, and the next day I'd be like, that absolutely no way am I doing this. But it took me quite a few months to get my life organized, because I work as the director of finance for our company, and I do all our payroll. I look after our bookkeeping, our corporate records, and I also was working as a director of community client services for social services, and those are big roles. So I needed to find a way to put that all on hold to run, and so I took a big jump off a cliff, and the support has been unbelievable. And it's validated all that research, my views of how I thought people were dissatisfied with the status quo, and I'm so glad I did this. It's been incredible. I was just door knocking at one of the homes, actually in my own community today, a seniors home, and somebody gets off the Access bus and says, "I'm supporting you," and somebody's driving by and they're hollering out the window, "Kelley, you got my vote." It's just unbelievable.
That's quite that's a wonderful experience. And
it is.
You mentioned earlier about a lot of people kind of being sick with the current city administration.
Right.
And so one thing that's really kind of been going on for the last few years is the issues with transit and
Yes.
big differences between the union and where the city is right now. And so if you're elected mayor, how would you mend those wounds?
Yeah, well, I actually think the only way to mend those wounds is definitely with new leadership. From what I can see, many of the members on council are pretty, especially the two incumbents who are running for mayor, are pretty entrenched in their views around the transit wanting something better than everyone else. And when I talk to the transit workers, what I hear them saying is that they don't feel the city was honest with them with what the value of the pension was. And what I see is two parties that haven't even agreed on the same information in terms of negotiating. Our transit workers have been undervalued for a very long time. They've been 4 years without a contract. And then they were also legally locked out when they said that they weren't satisfied with the contract that they were being negotiated. And that ended up costing at least $600,000 because it was illegal. And second, it cost also another $1 million to reimburse all those transit riders. So we're at least looking at $1.6 million of taxpayers' dollars that were wasted because of poor decision making and poor leadership. So as mayor, transit is one of my key priorities. I think we have to get to a resolution. I think having somebody new who is, and even before having all the details, I said we need to get an agreement, we need to value transit, we need to see them as a critical service in our city. And they came to me after hearing the transit workers hearing me take this position, and are so supportive, and I'm grateful for that. But I think they need hope. They need to believe that there's somebody there who hasn't closed their ears, who's willing to listen, who's willing to bring quick resolution. So I think they need to be valued fairly. And I also think we need to make sure from a pension perspective that we're negotiating in good faith and agree on the same numbers. I think people are reasonable, and when you are making sure you have the right information, people will make good decisions, and I'm confident we'll be able to get a resolution.
Right. And when you've been talking to these individuals, what strategies are they really saying would work for them?
In terms of transit, well, they want to be, there's lots of things that need to improve. They want to feel valued by the employer, by the city of Saskatoon, and right now they don't. And I think that is reflected in the wages that they've had up to this point. Our access transit drivers are paid less than even the other bus drivers, and I simply don't understand that. They have a tough job and a lot of responsibility making sure people are getting on and off the bus safely. So they're not feeling valued, that's one thing. The other thing that I've heard from both transit users and transit operators is that they're not always given the proper orientation to their new routes. So they go into work, they're assigned a new route, and what's happening is they don't know where they're going. So they're missing picking people up, they're missing dropping people off, and that's causing some real problems. They're struggling with the relationship between the management and the transit workers. So there's a lot of things that aren't working properly, and so I think what we need is we've got a 5-year plan, and I've set some priorities around transit about I want to increase ridership from the current 5% of multimodal shares, 87% of our mode shares, so how we get around the city, is single occupancy vehicles. And another 5% is transit users, another 5% is walking, and 2% is biking. And I'd like to take the transit multimodal share up to 20%. But what that'll take is, of course, investing in the high frequency transit so that people can get quickly to and from their destination along priority routes. Also, the bus rapid transit, so having designated lanes and areas. Having, I want to see priority clearing along sidewalks towards shelters so people can get there. Accessibility is very important to me. And I'd like to have more shelters and even heated shelters. We need to embrace that we are a winter city, and we need to start to get some priority locations and have that done. So it's about, that's one of the priority areas that I see putting our investment in at this time. How we also get more ridership is by, and I know you got some questions coming about growth, but growing in and growing up and densifying our city along those transit corridors.
Well, let's talk about that.
Okay.
What are your plans? As Saskatoon continues to grow, and there's plans for when the city's 400,000, 500,000.
Yeah.
What are your plans for growing Saskatoon?
Well, I'm a city planner by profession, and one of my priorities and my obligations as a planner is to make sure we have a sustainable city and that our development is making sure that it's a community that will be there for future generations. And right now we're growing a very expensive city. And what I mean by that is every time we develop a new neighborhood or we start the process, there's new infrastructure that's needed. So, of course, we need new roads, new sidewalks, water lines, sewer lines, fire, police, lighting, you kind of name it. And about 90% of the cost of the new developments is charged to development levies to developers, who then put those fees back on the residents when they buy their home. But there's 10% of those costs that aren't recovered. And those costs are bore onto you and me as the taxpayers, or if you're renting, onto your rental, cost and so on. And that's a real concern for me. So my priority is to grow in and to grow up Saskatoon. And that includes a number of policies around infill development. The city does have a future growth plan that identifies a number of strategic infill areas. There's about 500 vacant sites in Saskatoon right now that could be developed. But the problem is for developers, so let's say you and I wanted to, do a funky mixed use kind of multi-use development, it would cost us more to develop inside the city on one of those sites than it does for us to go into a greenfield and develop. It's a fundamental problem. Because we need to be recognizing that the infrastructure is already in the city. So the fire, the police, the water line, the sewer line, the road network, the civic centers, the libraries. So we need to bring the cost down so that when you and I want to do that project, it's more affordable for us to do that. The other thing is there's a lot of red tape in trying to be able to get your development done. So if you go into City Hall, there's a lot of unknowns when you try to develop on one of those 400 sites. And it's a very slow process, and there's some hidden costs in there. I've spoken to some developers, one who already had his plans done, had the site, started construction, lots of money already invested, and then was told that he had the wrong firewall rating. Another $50,000 was added to his project to be able to do that infill development, which you think about that person, in terms of the value here, he's taken a property that might be, let's say, paying $10,000, $15,000 a year in property taxes. As soon as he develops on it, it increases the value, which means you can collect more property tax. And let's say he's doing multi-unit dwellings. So every one of those units will pay property tax. So you can go from $10,000 or $15,000 property tax to $100,000, $200,000, some projects $1 million in property taxes. So you can see how important it is that we have the right policies to do these infill developments. So those are some of the key things that I have on my website at moreformayor.ca. So you can, I've got a whole platform on growth and growing in and growing up.
And that's, I'm really glad you brought all that up, especially in your website. Can you quickly talk about the definition? Because a lot of people I've talked to along the campaign trail, and they hear different words, and they kind of goes over our heads sometimes.
Okay.
Infill, what is that?
Well, it's when you have a vacant lot next to an area that is all developed. It has houses, it might have some businesses, it's got parks and schools, and you know, when you're walking down the street, all of a sudden there's a parking lot, and that's it. It's an inefficient use of space. What ideally, cities want to make sure that they have the highest and the best use of every piece of land that there is within the boundary of the city. So infill is when you prioritize development within an existing area. So we do have some infill development guidelines and some infill incentives and policies, but they're falling very short. So I want to talk a little bit about this, because one of the other candidates has talked about also wanting to grow in, but one of the challenges is that they've been there for 10 years, and we just had one of the biggest development booms in recent history. And so during that time, more than 5 neighborhoods were developed on the outskirts of Saskatoon. So now we've got a road network out there, we've got the utility boxes, the sidewalks, the water, the sewer, and we have to clear the snow out there, we got to pick up the garbage, and we have enough land ready for populate another 76,000 people. And how many people do you think are living in those areas right now? Just take a wild guess.
I have no idea.
Not even 7,000.
Not even under 7,000.
Under 7,000 people. And so we've got a problem on our hands, because we have to infill those areas now, and they're greenfields. So we got to grow up, because now the developer's not making any money as long as those sites sit vacant, and the city's not making any money, but we've put the investment in there. So that's a bit of a problem for us. And meanwhile, we need to be investing in. So we should have put some of these policies in place 10 years ago, so that we were balancing our growth during that development boom. So better late than never, I'm going to say at this point, as mayor, I will make sure to prioritize the infill development, so that as new developments are happening, we are infilling existing areas, those vacant sites, those parking lots, the downtown, as well as continuing to build on the outside. And the only way to do that is to create jobs. We need to continue to grow Saskatoon, and I can speak to that.
So with Kelley Moore as mayor, we'll
Yeah.
see Saskatoon having a lot more inward pay.
Yes.
Okay, and it will be
More density.
more density and efficient land use.
More, absolutely. And then that means lower taxes. You know, at the end of the day, I want Saskatoon to be an affordable city. And as I said, we are building an expensive city that we honestly can't afford. And the best way to make it more affordable is to make the best use of what we have. We're not having to clear as many sidewalks then, or repair as many roads, or expand water and sewer trunk lines. Police can get to responses more quickly, or fire. The more compact city we have, the more efficient and the better the services we can provide.
And that's kind of brings us into another topic of, and it's been mentioned a lot of times throughout this whole campaign, is crime in Saskatoon.
Yeah.
Crime is very much the root causes when we look at them are addictions, poverty.
Mm-hmm.
So we know the root causes. So how do you plan on helping us with the criminal problem in Saskatoon? As we are the top rated, I believe, in Canada right now per capita.
We are, and the severity of crime is the highest here as well. And by severity, I mean violent crime. And I have 6 priority areas in this election, and one of them is absolutely safety and security. I released my safety platform in the middle of September, and then I reissued one of my statements on my platform because I thought it was very important that the public know I do take safety seriously. Our current incumbent mayor tells us we don't have an issue with crime. What we have is that people are over-reporting crime. There's a truth that crime rates across Canada are lower. However, per capita, Saskatoon still has the highest crime rates, especially in the severity of crime, which is the violent crime. So there's a couple things I proposed. One is to form a task force, and I think that's very important because we need leadership at the mayor's table to show that we take safety in our community seriously. And by forming a task force, it allows us to identify that we acknowledge we have an issue, and second, to put some goals together to be able to say we're going to reduce it. I want to go from being the crime capital of Canada to being one of the safest cities in Canada. And the only way to do that is to have everybody working together. And so I see the police, of course, being involved, the provincial government, the corrections, the tribal council, the health region, nonprofit groups that are all working in the areas, even the faith community, the community associations, the businesses. I think if we are more coordinated in our effort to reduce crime, we will see more success in reducing crime because we're going to all be working towards the same target. And I can't think of a more important role of the mayor than to ensure that people of Saskatoon feel safe, no matter where they live or work. The other thing, just to jump in, Vernon, sorry, is around the root causes. Mm-hmm. And that means also looking at issues like homelessness, poverty, discrimination, and unemployment. And I think by having a strategy to reduce crime in Saskatoon, have everybody working together, those who are also working in those areas are part of that strategy. We right now have a serious drug and addictions issue, and that is, of course, propelling a lot of the crime that we're seeing in our city. So we need to be working with families, with children, with youth. And I know historically those areas of responsibility sit with the provincial government. But the city's been a partner, and in my career, I've actually had the privilege of working as what's called the Regional Intersectoral Committee Coordinator, which worked with all the human service providers, so the Chief of Police, the Chief Medical Officer, the VP of Primary Health, the Tribal Council, the directors of the Public School Board, Greater Saskatoon Catholic. You kind of name it, those people who are the key decision makers and who also have their fingers on the public purse, who can influence decisions and resources. We worked to try to create a seamless human service delivery system because there's a recognition that we all need to be working together to address and support the most marginalized and to contribute to that safety net so people aren't falling through the cracks. I want to see more community policing, so police in schools. I want to see more community associations being supported to have the safety patrols. But I also want to see children and the city participating with groups like the United Way and those others that I just mentioned in the homelessness strategy, such as Housing First. There is a plan to end homelessness in Saskatoon. I worked on the very first iterations in my role as a city planner and then as this human service coordinator, this regional intersectoral coordinator, and even in my capacity with the provincial government as a director. I will be a champion for that. Saskatoon is a leader in Canada in housing, actually. We actively develop land. We have 25-year supply of land, actually. And that's part of what's propelling our sprawl, but that's another conversation. And so we use some of the revenue that we generate from the sale of our land to be able to pay for housing programs. So I see that there's value in that and I want to continue that. The federal government right now, the Liberal government, I guess, is doing a national housing strategy. And this will be the first national housing strategy in history. It's very significant. And I see the city of Saskatoon being very well positioned. And as mayor, you can bet I'm going to be talking about the incredible programs and how we're a great place to pilot and bring investment in because we've got such an incredible network of services already for housing that we can really create a true continuum for those who are homeless, those who need transitional housing, to those who need affordable housing and social housing and so on, and seniors housing.
We're actually just running close to time.
Okay.
So are you good to take a couple more questions?
I'd love to, and I can be more quick too.
Okay, well, the next question we have is, a lot of people have been wondering, there's a lot of small businesses in Saskatoon.
Yes.
If you become mayor, how do small businesses benefit from that?
Well, one of my platforms and priorities is small business and entrepreneurship. I think one of the ways to address the high unemployment rate, the youth in particular unemployment rate that we have in Saskatoon, and overrepresentation of the Indigenous community in our youth unemployment rate, is by creating opportunities for small business and entrepreneurship, e-commerce. And how we do that is that there's a few things. One is it's about the promotion of it. It's working with the existing community. We have Sarita right now who has Square One, which is a bit of an incubator. We have a few really cool projects like Ideas Inc. over at the Farmers Market and the Wall Street Commons over in the Warehouse District. We need more so that people can take their ideas, they can share common space, they can get that creative energy going, and bring their crafts, their talents, their art, their products to a commercial area that is lower in cost for them, where you don't have the overhead of having to pay big rent or staff or photocopiers or internet connections. And as a small business owner myself, I know, and starting out at home originally, how important it is to have a support network to be able to encourage that. So those are some things that are a priority for me. I think the City Hall, Saskatoon City Hall, needs to be business friendly. We got a lot of red tape over there, and we look for ways to say no instead of ways to say yes. And I think if people know that City Hall is business friendly, we're going to see, and including our tax structure, we're going to see a lot more people taking risks to do these businesses. We have a high number of home-based businesses per capita in Canada. I want to get those folks out of their homes and into commercial areas. The only way to do that is by creating nooks and crannies, cool places, funky places where people can do their commerce and other people can come and purchase their goods. Quick story, when I was in Las Vegas, way off the strip, kind of by the Golden Nugget, I like to get off the beaten track. There was a really cool place called Container Park, and they took old railway cars, and 100 square feet, I'm not kidding, people had their businesses in there, and they built 2 stories of these railway tracks. They did a park in the middle. Why couldn't we do that? Most of these people don't need more than 100 square feet. So we need to be creative. We also need to look at local sourcing. I think Saskatoon, the city itself, look at all the purchasing it does, all of the contracts it does. I think we need to try to create opportunities for our local businesses to bid more into that, and reducing some of the barriers to that. So there's a lot of different things, but those are some of my priorities for how to encourage local business here.
Well, that's great. With the trains, that's a really neat idea.
Yeah,
Doesn't that look cool in Saskatoon, eh?
Yeah, it would fit here too. We're a railway town.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Question, everybody wants to know about taxes.
Yes.
What are property taxes looking like under Kelley Moore?
Well, they can't get any worse than they've been. I will tell you that. In the past 4 years, we've seen a 22% increase. In the past 10 years, 56%. So if people are feeling that they're having to pinch their pennies, even if we still had pennies, maybe they're loonies, that's why. We have, I think, not been very financially accountable and responsible with our tax dollars. I want to grow our tax base, and so that we aren't relying so much on the existing base. And part of it I mentioned was, of course, growing small business and entrepreneurship and supporting medium and large size. But 87% are small. Have 4 or fewer employees. So that's primarily our employment market right there, you know. The other is also working with the provincial government around revenue sharing, whether it's the sales tax or it's looking at the gas tax. I think we aren't getting our fair share of some of that for the population that we have, so working on those agreements and that negotiation. The other for me is also being able to change a little bit of our tax structure. So when I talked about transit corridors and densifying, as you do that, you're able to, the values along those corridors become higher. So if you think about cities like you've gone to, like Calgary or Vancouver, just where they have, the rail, the light rail, think of the values along those lines for people are very high because of the savings and the amenity of having that service. Saskatoon can expect to see that as well, where we value different pieces of land differently because of their proximity. So to me, it's about having multiple tax tools, not just relying solely on the property tax base, which can be very regressive. It can limit people on fixed income or people living in poverty and marginalized populations. I'm going to be somebody, I want to create as many diverse options to create revenue for our city as we possibly can and try to get away from, I think, what is a regressive property tax system.
So our taxes will be lower under you?
Well, that is the plan. Well, yes, that's the goal. I don't want to see us going up, but I think we can be more efficient than how we've been. People see the frustration with how roads are being repaired, where we're doing band-aids instead of long-term solutions. Maybe the crews aren't getting the most out of 8 hours as they should, or whatever their shifts are. And also our contracts. When people are building new buildings, things are going over budget and they're going over time, and the taxpayers are paying for that. We need to tighten that up by changing our procurement process. There's lots of areas where we can save some money. So it's also by being more efficient at City Hall. I think we can also bring those taxes down. It's going to take some hard work, and I am very ready for the challenge. I know we need a new perspective and somebody who is not afraid to call a spade and really willing to challenge the status quo.
Well, that's going to be our questions. I think we're over time. Do you have any last thoughts you want to finish with?
Well, I guess just that the voters know that this is a very important election. We just need to look in the rearview mirror to see what the decisions of the two incumbents have been around high taxes, around unsustainable development, of course marginalizing and almost completely destroying our transit system. I think people really are looking for change, and I am that person. I'm a city planner. I have 20 years experience working in government. I have a business, and I can hit the ground running. I understand how City Hall works, and I believe that we need to get City Hall working better for us. I think the employees at City Hall want to see that, and I know the taxpayers and the public do. And I am ready to take that on, and I hope people expect more from their mayor and vote Kelley Moore on October 26th.
And if they want to learn more about you, where can we find you?
Well, at moreformayor.ca.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kelley. Good luck
Thanks
to you.
so much. Very nice to meet you.
All right, that is good. Perfect.